Hey guys, it's Topic Bricks here and welcome to part 2 of building the Ministry of Magic in LEGO. In part 1 I introduced the concept for this mock series and showed off potential floor plans that I plan to utilise for this Ministry of Magic creation. I also talked about how this mock series was going to be conducted when it comes to the pricing ceilings, how the mock itself was going to be constructed, and we also discussed the targeted length of this video series. So if you haven't watched part 1 then make sure to follow the annotation on screen now. So in part 1 I asked you guys to tell me which floor plan I should adopt between floor plan 1 and floor plan 3. Floor plan 1 made the model longer and floor plan 3 made the model more condensed. And I got a mixed response from you guys, which was really interesting, but from 42 votes to 37, the winner was floor plan 3. So that's what floor plan I'm going to utilise for this mock series. I have since made a digital version of the floor plan for this mock series, and as you can see, it's just absolutely huge. We have all the key and iconic scenes which appeared in the movies, such as the Atrium where you have the rows of fireplaces, you have the Fountain of Magical Brethren, the courtroom which appears in the Order of the Phoenix, the Department of Mysteries corridor with some bonus offices off to the side, as offices are quite essential for a Ministry of Magic mock. We also have the Orb Room, which I do want to be collapsible to recreate that domino effect with the shells which dropped all the orbs crashing to the floor. And then we have the Archway Room, which hosts the Vale where Sirius Black got killed by Bellatrix Lestrange, and in this room we can have the big Death Eater fight versus Dumbledore's army and have that whole scene recreated. So if you remember in part 1 I talked a lot about how I want this creation of mine to be portable. I was going to achieve this by building the model on 16 by 16 mosaic art plates and essentially splitting the mock-up into different sections that can be detached from one another, and that's what I have laid out. I have split the entire plan 3 floor plan into 10 different sections, the biggest being 9 and 10. So that's the foundation work all done and complete, so thank you guys for your help on that. So what have I been working on since part 1 of this mock series, you ask? Well, I'll show you in a moment, but first, thanks for watching this video. If you're enjoying this mock series so far and want to keep up with its progress, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support is what allows me to bring you these LEGO mock videos as well as other LEGO Harry Potter content, and I have a huge amount of LEGO Harry Potter content planned for 2022 for you to enjoy. So I decided the best way going about completing this mock was to focus on one section, get that all done and complete, then move on to the next section. So this is what I did. I have been focusing on 2 areas since part 1, and these areas are section 1 and 2. Otherwise known as the Atrium with the Fireplace Corridor and the Fountain of Magical Brethren. So let me show you the first concept I had for section 1, the Fireplace Corridor. So here is my first mock-up for the Ministry of Magic Fireplaces. I initially wanted to have 3 in a row with fire on either side and space for a minifigure in the middle fireplace. However, the way I constructed the wall panels of this fireplace I wasn't too happy with. As you can see, if we open up the inside, the wall panels are connected with arm pieces, and while this works in the studio design software, I am not convinced it will be the strongest form of connection in real life. I just feel the panels here would be difficult to keep in place, or they in fact may just straight up fall off due to the connection not being the strongest, so I went back to the drawing board for a rethink. This is what I came up with. The design is essentially the same as the previous version, however the connections from the back wall to the tiled panels are far stronger. Here I have used hinges instead of the arm pieces, and even some of the hinges with teeth at the base of the slanted wall and at the top as well. I was pretty sure I was going to go through with this fireplace design, however I still had some issues with it. The first issue is that the 1x2 dark green tiles I used cost about $5 to $10 each on Bricklink due to their rarity, which is completely just unfeasible. Though I could have just used 1x1 green tiles instead, but I'm not sure how great that would look with all the gaps. Another issue I had was the fireplace itself. I wanted to implement a sort of play feature similar to what the Borough set had from 2010. This being the ability to switch from having a minifigure in the fireplace to having the green flames take its place, but I wasn't too sure how I could implement that here. The reason why implementing this sort of play feature here was important to me is because if you watch the Harry Potter films, the green fire isn't a permanent fixture. The green fire only rages for a split second in 2 different scenarios. These are when someone either travels from the Ministry of Magic fireplace to another, or when someone travels into the Ministry of Magic fireplace from another. So I'm sure you can understand that having green flames just fixed in place here doesn't really make sense, as the fireplaces in the Ministry are just empty for most of the time. So I got some help from friends on this, and we came to the conclusion that the best way to implement this play feature was to have a turntable, where I would have a minifigure on one side and the green flames on the other, with a knob at the top of the fireplace section which I could turn to rotate the turntable. The only issue with this solution was that it took up a lot of room which I didn't have, which meant I had to redesign the fireplace section for a 3rd time. I had to find a way of having a slanted black and green wall which could be supported by itself, as having any sort of support system on the inside of the structure used up the room which I needed to implement the turntable play feature that I wanted. So this is what we came up with. We came up with a totally new design which utilised black studs and 1x2 dark green plates, which thankfully aren't anywhere near as expensive as those 1x2 dark green tiles. The good thing about this design was it was self-supporting, with no need for a support structure, which gave us the space to implement the turntable play feature which I wanted. So I'm just absolutely over the moon that we managed to achieve, in my mind, the perfect Ministry of Magic fireplace design, and now with this section completed, it was time to move on to the design of the Fountain of Magical Brethren. Now the Fountain of Magical Brethren lies within the Atrium of the Ministry of Magic, and it depicts the golden figures of a wizard, witch, centaur, goblin and a house elf. The witch and wizard are the 2 focal points of the fountain, with the other lower beings looking up in awe and admiration of the wizards. Now for the fountain, I couldn't make all of the figures which featured in the fountain due to the lack of space, so I chose to depict 3 of the 5 characters in this model, those being the witch, goblin and the centaur. The hardest thing to try and recreate was the centaur, as I couldn't obviously just use any sort of mould because the statues had to be in pearl gold, just like in the movies, so I had to try and recreate a minifigure scale golden centaur statue out of a limited selection of pearl gold parts, and this is what I came up with. I used minifigure legs to replicate the legs for the horse and used just regular parts to make up the rest of the body. For the witch, I used a pretty simple design, and I gave her a book as well because she seems to hold one in all the concept art that I could find for the Fountain of Magical Brethren. For the goblin, I gave him the short legs, and I also gave him the helmet piece that I gave the centaur in an attempt to replicate the goblin's long and pointy ears. It doesn't work too well, but there's not really too much I can do, since there's no pearl gold goblin head mould. For the design of the fountain itself, my first instincts were to build it using bricks like this. This was my first concept, and my plan was just to fill up this basin with trans blue studs, but I decided to experiment with the help of some friends to try and make the fountain more round rather than just sort of a square with round edges. Here was our first design attempt. We decided to try and use the same technique as the one we used for the fireplaces, but quickly came to the conclusion that the fountain basin would be just too large, so we had to come up with something else. My friend put this alternate design together, which did work as the fountain circumference was much smaller. However, we were not able to tile off the top of the 1x2 rounded plates, as doing so merges the tiles together, as there was not enough room separating them. So we went back to the drawing board and decided the best alternative was to use hinge plates. These hinge plates allowed us to tile off the top, as you can see. The only issue with this is that it is very large, but we decided to take that flaw and use it as an opportunity to make the fountain bigger than we had planned. If you take a look at the Fountain of Magical Brethren, we can see that there are multiple levels with different sub-fountains, if you will. I think making the fountain like this, as depicted in the film, would not only be more accurate, but it would make the Fountain of Magical Brethren a centerpiece of the atrium. So this is the final design for the fountain that I ended up with. So as you can see, the fountain is absolutely huge and I just love how it came out. It is 3 levels high and is actually minifigure scale, so the size of the fountain is accurate to the size of the fountain in the movies, which is just brilliant. I have ordered exactly 1,135 trans blue studs to fill up the 3 basins. I just went ahead and cleared a couple of UK Bricklink stores and that's what the total came to. I don't know if it will be enough to fill the 3 basins. It's kind of hard to gauge how many I would need. I may even have studs left over, so we'll see what happens with that. The final element which is present in the Ministry of Magic Atrium is the offices on the interior walls. These offices are quite small and aren't attached to the ground. I wanted to make at least 2 of these office towers in my model, so I started working on my first concept. This was the result of my first attempt, and while it's not too bad, it doesn't quite nail down the rounded shapes as I hoped it would. I then decided to take advantage of the rounded corner window pieces used in the recent boutique hotel modular building set. This was because it would make these Ministry of Magic tower blocks more rounded. However, the drawback of this was it would increase the size of these tower blocks and I didn't have all the room in the world to work with. However, we managed to make it work. This was the second and final concept we came up with. In my opinion, this second version looks a lot more accurate and rids all of these panel gaps which the previous version had. All in all, I think the final outcome for the Ministry of Magic Atrium looks absolutely fantastic. It's gone through a lot of work and a lot of trial and error, but at the end of the day, that's what makes a model great. Not accepting your first version and always striving to do better and to reach perfection. The fireplaces in this model are a perfect size and the curved wall design really does give it that smooth look. I am also made up we managed to keep that turntable play feature that I wanted. The Fountain of Magical Brethren is my favourite part of this atrium though, with just its sheer size. It's just night and day to that previous first draft version that I came up with. Also, just to clarify before anyone brings up the contrast in the floor between the 2 different shades of brown, this is intentional, as if you look at pictures from the movies you can see the wood colour of the fountain section is a far lighter brown to the wood colour of the fireplace section, so that's why I went for a mix there. Another thing I want to add is that I plan to light up this entire Ministry of Magic MOC with LEDs once it has been completed, and that obviously includes this atrium. I am going to install 2 green LED lights in the fireplaces, 1 in each. I am also going to install some warm white LEDs in each room of the office towers, so that's 6 in total right there. And lastly, I am going to install some dark blue LEDs amongst the studs in the fountains. That way, the studs will have sort of a glowing effect I hope, which will look really great and give it a really nice contrast against the very dark colours of the Ministry's walls. I'll probably have 2 or 3 dark blue LEDs in the bottom basin of the fountain, then 1 in each of the top 2 smaller basins. Now if you've worked with LED lights before, for LEGO or any other small craft, you will know that you will need a circuit board where all the wires will meet each other. Well, that location will be held at the back compartment that I have incorporated into my MOC behind one of the office towers. If you simply take a couple of these black tiles off the top, then you can see that there is space here for the circuit board for the surrounding area to be stored. So I'm in the process of ordering all the parts for what I've done so far, but I'm having some trouble. If I wanted to source all of the parts domestically, then I would have to order from a total of 31 stores on Bricklink, meaning the postage would probably be around $200 alone, which is far more than I'm willing to spend on postage alone. So I'm going to have to source these parts internationally, and because of that, the parts would take a little while to arrive. The total piece count for the atrium is 4,300. And the total cost for the atrium comes to around £450 or $600 US. This is quite a lot, but it means we will have knocked out 2 of our 10 planned sections of this Ministry of Magic MOC. In part 3 of this MOC series, we have a lot of fun things planned. We will be doing a bricklink haul of all the parts, hopefully, as long as all the parts arrive on time, and I am going to attempt to do a time lapse of myself building this Ministry of Magic Atrium so we can see how it looks in real life. And maybe as well, if we have time, I'll show you some concepts and mock-ups of Section 3, which is of course the Ministry of Magic courtroom, where Harry Potter held his hearing in the Order of the Phoenix. So exciting times ahead, and I can't wait to show you guys what I've planned for Section 3 and also to show off what this atrium will look like in real life. So make sure to hit that subscribe button to not miss out on part 3 of this LEGO Ministry of Magic mock series. And that about wraps up this video. If you haven't watched part 1, then click the video on screen now to be taken straight to it. Also, thank you to the members of this channel who help make these videos possible, and a special thank you to Tommy C Bricks, Lucas Hatch, Brightest Witch Bricks, Kay Crossley and MLD Bricks, who are all tier 3 members of this channel. Your support is truly appreciated. And on that note, I've been Topic Bricks, and I'll see you very soon for another awesome tacular LEGO Harry Potter video. Bye for now.